The main character of my film started off as three very rough physical sketches, which I ended up taking the best aspects from for the final design. The first draft of my cube was heading down the right path, however I felt the character looked a little lifeless, with an overall lack of extra components on the outside which would make it feel more robotic. Along with this, my metal texture was reflecting light in an extremely odd manner and didn't quite look as I imagined. So on the second attempt, I corrected the texture to what it is now by adjusting the randomness and level of distortion on the noise texture and Voronoi texture nodes, which affect the metallic blemishes. I added more components to the outside which I can animate to make the character feel more alive, such as its heart rate monitor and fan. I then revised its eyes by widening them and adding a bevel modifier to create that distinct digital split you can see on a digital clock face, for instance. The third and final design just added details on the outside, such as a CPU and extra robotic paneling with a rusty brown texture. Here was a successful early test animation which shows how it'll look in the final film. My process for modeling a single building usually takes 5 to 10 minutes. I frequently use a cube as my basis, except for the occasional icosphere, because they are incredibly easy to work with because of the wide faces which can be loop cut effortlessly to help create windows. However, I only did this after creating the shape I wanted, which usually consisted of taking a face and generating a pattern with extrusion or scaling, or moving it to create a particular shape. The tricky thing is the raw trial and error that comes with this. Sometimes ideas come off as tacky or the detail is not captured properly from a distance. I was sure to continuously reference my camera's perspective with the right depth of field to ensure quality. A detailed cityscape took around a couple hours to model, a time which I believe demonstrates a streamlined workflow for this process. To create other unique polygons such as a triangular prism, I would use a cylinder as my base and decrease the vertices count to 3. However, I did not want all my buildings to be like this because manipulating a prism which is not a cube into a legitimate structure, which is also stylistically appropriate, is quite difficult. Every scene which had movement from characters usually started off by outlining a general path for my cube on the XYZ axes, which was then tracked with the camera by keyframing its own movement for a tracking shot or rotation. After outlining the basic path of the cube, I then key movements which are minor in size but major in impact. This includes any kind of consistent tilt or rotation to show the cube is being drawn to something specific. The trickiest part is not overdoing or underdoing these movements. Take a bobbing motion on the Z-axis, and here is a comparison with too much where it looks jagged, and one with not enough where it looks lifeless. The middle ground just requires trial and error. After this, I animate the cube's components, such as the rotation of the fan, or the illumination of the heart rate monitor, which are the easiest things to work with. As a finishing touch, I work on the eyes, which should constantly move around like human eyes, along with blinking every now and then by aggressively shrinking their size on the vertical axis. This process is mimicked on a simpler degree with the spheres and helps add life to every scene to make the animation more engaging and less jarring to watch. Overall, learning how to do all this was an enormous challenge with my initial lack of experience in animation, and took many failed renders and studies of masterworks to grab a solid understanding of. I wanted to create a sci-fi text reveal for the film name at the end, but I didn't want it to be in the same style as my student number at the start. I started off by dropping my film name and creating a basic intro which randomly outlines parts of the characters. In duplicating this layer 5 times and applying a different effect to each, whether it be a type of distortion or a glow, and then slightly offsetting each layer by half a second, you get the end product, which is a constantly evolving title. I then simply reverse the first transition to finish it off. The folio of this film was quite a substantial challenge due to the COVID-19 restrictions which came into play in late June, restricting me from doing my own foley. Most notably, I wanted to record my friend's 3D printer and use all the robotic whirring as the sound of my protagonist. In the end, I had to outsource my foley from online public domain databases such as Zapsplat.com. I did all the foley in Premiere Pro using the stock plugins for mixing. To give sound effects the illusion of space, I would add surround reverb. Or to mimic a realistic environment, I would automate panning and volume depending on the distance or position of an object in the frame, such as the train in the opening scenes.